Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here with the Geo from France, and we were abruptly cut off in our last conversation, so we're going to finish discussing the political scene in France a bit to give us a context for understanding France today from an objectivist viewpoint. Now, Geo, can you remember what point you were trying to make when we were so rudely cut off, which I apologize for?
I was just speaking about the connection between how the far right connect capitalism and postmodernism. For instance, I had a very specific example in mind, but we have seen together that strangely it doesn't work the same way on Wikipedia in the USA than in France, but you know, the far right usually they say people who advocate man's right, they are very critical of the concept of man's right, and they call it droit de l'hommisme, and that means literally man's rightism. And the fact is that it shows you how they connect capitalism and postmodernism in their mind. So there is a Wikipedia article in French about this idea of this concept of droit de l'hommisme, meaning man's rightism. And if you switch to English, you go to the article, but it doesn't. I think it doesn't work because when I send you the article droit de l'hommisme in French, you was already on the on English article, and it was not what I expected. So it was not exactly like me. But here in France, when you go on this article, droit de l'hommisme, and you switch to English, you go to social justice warrior. So, and for me, of course, you can see social justice warrior is connected to postmodernism. But you see, there is a connection between man's right and social justice warrior. So for the far right. So
Now,
it's very strange, but I think there is a contradiction in the far right, and I wanted to say also this, that they have been so persecuted in the media for decades that now they are the champions of freedom of speech.
oh, sorry, I just had that thing come on. So the champions of freedom of speech in
Are
the
the far right,
and they are seen as being essentially not different from the social justice warrior gang. Or,
no. Maybe I was not clear. Sorry, I was not clear.
Well, postmodernism and okay, so capitalism and individual rights are not. Where do they fit into this scene? So it looks to me like capitalism and the social justice warrior postmodernism. Is social justice warrior mean postmodernism?
Okay, maybe I was not clear. Social justice warrior and postmodernism, for me, I don't know if you agree with me, but for me it's the same.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So according to the far right, capitalism and postmodernism is connected. It's the same. Okay.
Yeah. Capitalism and postmodernism are the same. Yeah.
So and according to them, man's right and they are very critical of the concept of man's right, the far right. Okay.
Because they believe in the francophone, the French state, or something like that.
Yeah. And for them, capitalism, and I think they connect capitalism and man's right, and I agree, but they connect all this with postmodernism. For them, if you are the supporter of man's right, you are a social justice warrior. You understand?
Well, I mean, do I understand? I mean, I think it's insane.
I think also, but I just try to explain their point of view.
Yeah.
And here, what I think is a contradiction for them is that since they have been persecuted in the media, now they advocate freedom of speech. even in the American way, because in France, usually the politicians they don't advocate full free speech like in America. They advocate limited free speech. It's no, it's very bad in my opinion. And you have only the far right who advocate really full free speech, but they don't seem to realize that it's a matter of man's rights. Of man's right.
They're advocating it in a pragmatic way because they're being attacked and they don't like being attacked.
Maybe.
So they weren't advocates of free speech before when they weren't being attacked and deplatformed, but they've decided to advocate for it because they're being.
That's possible. I of course I'm not in their mind, so maybe some of them understood that it's a question of principle. But for me, it's a contradiction that they say we are against the concept of man's right, but in the same time we are for full free speech.
Yeah.
If you are for, it's a man's right. It's a question of man's right.
We have a right to speak freely, and we have no rights.
Yeah. So for me, it's a contradiction. But anyway, so. This is the ideology of the far right in France. So you see there is a cultural difference with the US. And yes, they are very statist compared to the US, and they have no problem to refer to Karl Marx if necessary, because he also said, Karl Marx, that the capitalism destroyed the traditions. So yeah, it's different.
Now, say the French term for rightism.
Droit de l'hommisme.
Droit de l'hommisme. And now, I've pulled that up. I've gotten to it one way or another here on Wikipedia. Now, what should it say when I hit translate to English? What should droit de l'hommisme say? What should it say?
It means droit de l'hommisme. If you translate it very literally, it means man's rightism.
Okay. And I hit translate, and it says social justice warrior.
Yeah.
And it should say man's rightism.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you translate it very literal, but there is no there is no word in English man's rightism.
So, what? That's kind of spooky. It's really bizarre now. Is that just because the philosophical scene is so utterly bizarre in France that they just have no way to look at things? Everything is just absolute, like that picture, that image that we were looking at. They've got capitalism and communism together next to each other as.
Yeah, but of course from your perspective you see it very bizarre, but from their perspective it's the American way which is bizarre. And it's somehow it's cultural differences because, as I said last time, I think they don't focus on the same things. For the political issues in America and in Europe or in France, but I don't want to talk for the other countries, but don't focus on the same issues. It's for them, and I think, as I told you privately, I think the way of the American the issues on what they focus on are the proper one, and in Europe, I think they focus on non-essential issues, but from their perspective, it's essential, and it's the American who confuse the things for them. But they don't care too much because for them, like, if you ask French far right, they have no problem with the way the American see the American perspective, because they say it's their nation. Every nation has its own specificity, its own attributes, its own history, its own context, its own. So there are no problem. The Americans see this like this, and we are different. We are French, and every nation has its own perspective, and I think they see things like this.
Yeah, it's a very deep nationalism, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
France is a very nationalist country.
Somehow, yes. Yeah, somehow. It's paradoxical because it's a nationalist, and it depends because you have also the hate of the hatred of the France in France. But it's a little bit like in America. You see, and you have America is also somehow a very patriotic country, but you have also hatred of America within America.
Very
Lots of
strong.
hatred of America, like Michael Moore, Noam Chomsky. They hate America, and you have the same also in France. It's yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
You've got the whole postmodernist tradition comes strongly from France, the hatred of Western civilization.
this is true, and here is an interesting fact. The far right, they don't seem to realize that the postmodernist tradition comes from France. In their mind, it comes from the US, from America, from American university. They always said, I always see this on because I follow the far right YouTubers and the far right scene, and they always seems to believe that postmodernism is an American stuff, from American university. And I always say to them, no, actually, yes, it's true that it's very prevalent in American university. That is completely true. With HGW, very radical, maybe probably more radical than in France. But first of all, it comes from Michel Foucault, all the postmodernist philosophers, Jacques Derrida, etc., etc. But they don't seem to realize this.
Yeah, it's Derrida and Foucault. Now, is the reason that they don't understand that that's the case? Is that because they don't view ideas as what actually moves history? They believe that nations are what move history.
That's possible. That's possible explanation.
Now, if they understood that ideas move history, then they would maybe have more faith in what France could do, and if France could move history. But
Maybe.
they don't. They used to have the view that France could move history. They used to have the idea that ideas moved history. And when Napoleon was in power, he had scholars go all over Egypt and look every nook and cranny and write books about everything.
Yeah.
So that's a shame. It's a shame that the culture goes downhill over time like that. And I hope that's not coming to America. But we adopted you guys as goddamned ideas, so it doesn't look good.
So, so I wanted to talk also about the. So we talk about the far right, but you have some other political force actually in France, and to be simple, you have five main political force. So before 2000, the last election, 2017, yes, things were quite simple. You had the mainstream left, called the Socialist Party, the mainstream right, called the Republicans, like in the US, and you have also the far left and the far right. And it was like that for decades. And when Emmanuel Macron was elected, he completely destroyed this. Now, the old mainstream left and the old mainstream right now are not completely dead, but almost dead, especially the mainstream left. And nobody could believe it could happen before. Can you imagine that tomorrow the Republicans and the Democrats in the US become minority parties because of a third party, a centrist party coming from nowhere, blows out the traditional system? It seems unbelievable, and it is somehow what happened in France 2 years ago. Very unexpected.
Trump is sort of what Trump is.
Somehow, yes, but still, he's a Republican, and he doesn't destroy the Republican Party and the and you have still the
There's an argument about whether
the,
he's
the
destroyed the
Democratic
Republican
Party.
Party. There's an argument about whether he destroyed the Republican Party because he told them. I mean, he was on stage with 16 real Republicans, and
Yeah.
he told them if you don't nominate me as the Republican, then I'll just go run by myself, and I'm going to take all your voters. So you better nominate me. And they did, and he doesn't believe any of the stuff that general Republicans believe. So he has, in a sense, the Republican Party, in a sense, is gone. And also, in a sense, the Democratic Party is melted. It's just, there's nothing there, and they are imploding. So the scene, as you describe it in France, that there's one new party that's bigger than everybody else, that sort of is the Trump Party in America. But anyways, go ahead.
Yes, and I think I'm not sure of that. I don't know exactly. You can never know because you are never in the mind of people. I don't know exactly what Trump thinks of Emmanuel Macron, but it seems to me that he has some, even if he doesn't like him so much, but he has some respect for the fact that both destroyed the old mainstream system of their own countries. I don't know. Maybe it's.
Now, is Macron materially different from both the other parties, or is he just?
Yes.
Yeah, materially different. How so?
Materially?
Like actually different. I mean, is he just verbiage and it's all the same garbage still?
It's a difficult question. I would say he's yes, quite different in the style.
Is he just the beginning of new changes? Is he just like the death knell of the old system and things have got to change? Or has he actually brought new, fresh actions or ideas?
He brought up. Wait, I will. I try to explain you where he comes from. He was from the left initially, but he denied being a socialist, and actually he became famous by his pro-capitalist and pro-individualism statement. That's how he became famous. It was very surprising from a guy who comes from the left, and that drives people crazy in France because at the time he was working as a minister with the mainstream left government, and his reforms were in the sense of privatization, more competition, less government. And he said that liberalism, which is in France means capitalism, was also a value of the left, which is historically true in France, if you remember what I said in our last video.
About liberalism being from the old meaning of the word liberal, which we're all fighting about in America today.
Yes, yes. When you say I mean liberal not in the American sense, in the European sense, like Ludwig von Mises wrote a book called Liberalismus in German, liberalism, and he meant it in the European sense of the term, meaning John Locke, Adam Smith,
liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the liberals today, or the lefties, they're definitely not into liberty. They're into the freedom for drag queens to marry children and stuff like that. But
but in Europe it was not the meaning of liberal of the American, and so Emmanuel Macron made a lot of pro-individualist statements. Like he said, it's not bad to wanting to make money, to wanting to be rich, that there is too much taxes on the rich, that the state cannot make everything for you, that you have to go by your own, and a lot of things like that. And it was quite new, and each of those statements makes scandal in the country. So that's
how he became famous, and he was very firm in those statements. He never evaded a confrontation. Like, he will come to the workers face to face and argue with them, explaining why global competition is good and we must respect property and so on. I have a very specific example in the election before the last the second round against Marine Le Pen. There was a factory. It was threatened to be to move in Poland. So the workers were very angry against global competition, and Emmanuel Macron they were very angry, and he come with them, inside of them, face to face, and he said to them, the government cannot save you because we have to I cannot nationalize your factory because we have to respect private property and so on, etc., etc. And he explained what is private property, was very pedagogical, and Marine Le Pen come with the same at the same factory, and she just make a selfie with the workers, and she said, "No problem, I will nationalize the factory, and you will be saved."
Oh,
So you can see the difference. It's so I don't want to give you I don't try to give you a good image of Macron and a bad image of Marine Le Pen, but this is fact, really. And so you have never seen something like that before in France. It was very shocking for the French audience because he came face to face, and somehow it was impressive because he said something to face with people, knowing that they will become angry, that he will say that. But all the French other politicians, they say the thing that you want to hear. They say, "Oh, no problem, I will solve your problem. Just ask, and I will." So he was called Emmanuel Macron was called the banker. Also because he comes from a private sector and not from the political scene. Like Trump, again, I was just thinking about that. And contrary, it's very different to almost every French politician who make all their career in administration. And he worked he was before in the Rothschild bank. So he's always called the banker. By all the opponents,
which is like a derogatory smear against him, I assume.
Oh yes, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But since people became crazy of this pro-capitalist statement or individualist statement, he reassured them, saying that he was not for full laissez-faire, that we need also some protection. And this is when he started to present the key concept of his political philosophy, which is en même temps, meaning in the same time. Like, it is the key word, in the same time, for the key expression. Like, you have one thing on one hand and the contrary on the other hand, to be balanced, you see? So he's in fact a centrist. We had a centrist previously, but it was different because the former centrist wanted to make a mix between of the mainstream left and the mainstream right, but left and right were both statist. So it was a mix of two different kind of statism. And Macron is centrist also, but in a different way.
So at the same time, meaning both the left and the right's best ideas are what he's accepting. Is that what it is? Both at the same time, all the good ideas are for his party? Is that what he's saying? At the same time? What does at the same time mean? What are the two things that are at the same time? Both the left and the right?
It's in every respect. Almost every field. He said, like, we will do this, but we have to be balanced, and we will make a little bit of, liberty, but
protection.
Okay, so it's just
open border, not full immigration, but not open border. In every aspect, it's kind of in the middle of the road.
all right. Yeah, so his slogan is pragmatism.
Yes, somehow he is a pragmatist, but in some respect, Macron is also a kind of postmodernist. For example, when it comes to feminism or environment, here the leftist in him is more prevalent. And somehow, when I told you that the far right connect capitalism and postmodernism, Emmanuel Macron embodies this kind of connection somehow. And they love him as an adversary because for them it's the perfect adversary, the perfect opponent. He praised the modern world, while the far right hates what is modern and praise tradition. So this is the issue they fight on which they fight. You have also the big fight on Europe, European Union. Here it's a big issue. Of course, Macron is very pro EU, and the far right is against the EU in general.
Yeah, you guys are stuck with the EU. I mean, you guys voted no on the EU, and then you got into it. Or what did you vote no on? The Constitution?
Sorry.
What did you vote no on? France voted no on something, and then so they just ran the vote again.
Actually, yes, you refer to there was in 2005, it was a treaty, like kind of constitution for the European Union. It was not really a constitution, it was a treaty called, I don't know.
It was 25,000 pages. Or however long, 2,500 pages. I mean, a constitution is 9 pages, so it wasn't a constitution.
I said 25 the year. It was
2005, yeah, but it was a very long constitution. I mean, it was books and books and books and books and books full of stuff.
Yeah. And so what happened is that we voted no. And finally, when in 2007, Nicolas Sarkozy, the president, was elected president, he was from the right wing. And during the campaign, he said he proposed a new treaty. He proposed to negotiate a new treaty, which was kind of similar to the one which was rejected. But people elected him. So, yes, that's the contradiction, maybe. So it's very strange, yes.
Yeah, it's a mess over there. I don't know what to do except I wonder why Macron is saying these things, though. What ideas is he trying to bring? Some essential Americanism of freedom and free economics into the conversation? Should we give him some credit?
We wouldn't say in France Americanism,
right?
But
can we give him any credit, or is he just being pragmatic? Like, we've got to cut taxes; they're too high.
He's pragmatic.
Just pragmatic, no essentially different thought. I mean, you said he's saying things like, it's okay to succeed and have wealth and stuff like that.
Yes, but somehow I'm not in his mind. It seems I don't know if it's really principled or pragmatic. It's very hard to say, but compared to all the other politicians, the former mainstream politicians, he seems much more open to individualism and capitalism in comparison.
He's not, but he's not, of course, he's not objectivist. He's not fully for capitalism. But you know, in France, if you say, I was sometimes accused just because I advocate capitalism or selfishness or individualism, people often accuse me like, oh, you are for Emmanuel Macron, of course, you know, even if I never say such a thing, I never mention him.
So they
But
associate Macron with those ideas now.
yes, yes, almost all the opponents of Macron I associate capitalism, individualism, business with Emmanuel Macron.
Hmm.
In France, it is the the general perception in general. I don't know what sometimes Macron was not. He was not very clear sometimes on the campaign because sometimes he said very general ideas and it's a little bit blurry. You don't know how it will concretely what it is, and so that's the problem with him. For example, I don't know exactly what is his position on immigration. It's not very clear to me. I don't think he's for. As I said, I think he's in the middle. He's centrist on. It seems to me centrist on all the issues. He has something very romantic in his political style and his communication, but in the same time, as he put it, he's also very pragmatic. It's like he's making pragmatism romantic. It's very strange, but I think this is what a lot of people like about him. This mixture of something very optimistic, but not radical. Like he can speak of economics in a very technical way, and after that, he can be very lyrical about the glory of France and quote from poems and literature and integrate all that. So I think when I see the others, all the other politicians, is the Macron is not the best. He's the less bad, the less worst for me. Maybe okay. This is if you ask my opinion, but I might. This is only my opinion. But when you just as a matter of fact, independently of what you think of his ideas, honestly, he's very smart, even if you don't like him. But because when you compare him to the other French politicians, they all seem so emotional. He seems somehow very rational in contrast to the others. He seems to know what he's talking about, and I don't say that to praise him. I really try to explain. I can. You can think it's all just an illusion because he's very good in communication. Maybe it's only yes, maybe it's only an illusion. That's fair enough. But yeah, this is how what we see today. Maybe I don't follow the news close enough to say to be very specific and say here he made something in my sense and or something more in the sense of more capitalism and here it is bad because I don't follow the news in details. I follow very in general, but in general it seems to me that he in some aspects I say some aspect, not every aspect. He go on more. I mean, maybe or less, more competition or less government. But always you have this balance. You know, he always add new protection. He removes something and he adds something. So, but the previous politician, they always add more government, more government, more government. So yeah. So today you have Macron, you have the far right of Marine Le Pen, whom we talked about last time, and you have also after that, you have, in order, because I wanted to tell you the main political force in France in order of importance. So first you have Macron, after you have Marine Le Pen, the Rassemblement National. And in third position, if I may say, you have the former mainstream right. So the party called Les Républicains, the Republicans. So yes, I send you the Wikipedia. Maybe you can show. But so I don't know what to say about them because they have no real leader anymore. A lot of important personalities of this party went with Macron. Not all of them. The current prime minister that Macron chose, for instance, is from this party. I don't know exactly how to qualify their ideology. It seems that it changed. I don't know if they have any ideology. They claim the legacy of Charles de Gaulle, obviously. But they are pragmatists in general. Again, in fact, they are not so far from the party of Emmanuel Macron, and that's why they have a problem now. So it seems to me that they don't disagree with Macron in principle, but they disagree on how to apply the principle somehow. Maybe. I'm not sure, even if they have any principle or if they have any.
I was going to say,
that's the problem.
What principles are you talking about? I don't know what principles you would be referring to. It seems like they're just a confused mishmash of...
They are not very intellectual, you know, like that's a problem that Ayn Rand, when she was alive, she always said, like, she envied the left by the fact that they were very intellectual, you know, and she would like the right wing to be more intellectual, because sometimes she said that the right wing lacks ideas and intellectual. So I'm not referring to any particular principle, but just the fact to have principle, even bad principle. I don't know if they have any principle, you know.
Yeah.
So, but maybe it depends of the individual also, because there are different individuals. It was a big party for a long time. They were in power for a long time in France. So they are partly responsible for the current situation. So
now, if Macron offers a fresh, at least a little teeny glimpse of economic freedom or something like that, of getting the state less involved, if he offers a glimpse of that, what is the positive thing that Marine Le Pen is offering? Is she just appealing to the people who are really, really publicly upset about immigration?
She basically she has two sides, like stop immigration and grow the welfare state, or maybe not grow the welfare state, but nationalize, protect, you know, stop globalization, like stop. Like you said, very nationalistic. Stop. She always talk about unfair competition, like competition with the other countries where the labor is cheap. It's unfair, so we have to close the border with not with immigration, but also with product, you know, to have. So basically, she's, as I said last time, on social and economics issue, she's almost, yes, she's socialist, essentially. And because she always have big project with huge spending, government spending, but we never know. It's like the communists. We don't know how they will, who will pay. We don't know. It's and on immigration, on immigration, it's clear, it's closed border. So this is essentially, maybe I don't know enough of the details of her program, and it might change from election to election. but basically I give you a general overview of her political philosophy.
So the two
like
sides are close the borders and everything else is basically okay, everything will be fine and we can keep being France and doing our thing. If we close the borders, everything will be fine, or that's the most important or the best thing to do. Close the borders and then just carry on with our mixed economy.
Oh yes, maybe it's a bit simple, but yes, you could say it summarized like this somehow. Yes.
All right. Just trying to let the audience and myself understand what the scene is in France.
Oh yes.
Because I like Marine Le Pen in the sense that she is upset about the immigration thing, which I think is a huge, huge problem. But then Marine Le Pen is not anywhere compared to Macron on economics. Are they really, really that different? Is Macron principally different, or is he just saying that to give lip service to it? But that makes me suspicious then that the French people want this message of free economy and get the government out of our life. They seem maybe to want it, and the government is afraid to let anybody give that message, maybe? Is it the case that the French people want to hear lower taxes, less regulation, it's okay to be rich, or they're pretty mad about that, aren't they?
This is a very, very good question. I always wonder what the majority of people, maybe it's 50-50. I really don't know. There is a lot of people who works, like simple workers who are very who are tired of regulation, taxes. There is a lot of people like that in France. There is a lot. But you have also the burden of ideas, of history, of the history of socialism in France. So really, it's a good question. I really can't say, and I don't think I'm not sure majority of people understand it like this. Sometimes it seems to me that they are confused about all these things. They don't understand very clearly those issues. Like sometimes the yellow vest, it was exactly like that. It was, we want less tax and more government. It was exactly the speech of the yellow vest. So
yeah, I was about to say, let's mention the yellow vests and talk about them a bit, because they were pretty mad, and the thing they were ostensibly mad about was a gas tax. But what they wanted was for the government to not put the gas tax on and to protect the unions or protect raises or wages or something like that at the same time. So go ahead and give us a little description of what the situation was with them. I assume I've given some bit there.
There is a lot to say about that. Maybe we could do a dedicated video, but basically it started with a tax. This is true, but it was never, because I heard sometimes from the US people thinking, Yaron Brook, for example, made this mistake. He was thinking that it was a movement against tax, even in the beginning, but never, not even in the beginning, it was never a anti-tax as such movement. It was like, we are just poor, and we are tired to be poor, and so we just are tired of taxes, but we want all the other claims they have. It was more government, more protection, protectionism. It was anti-capitalist. It was not like ideological leftist protest. It was just regular people who are not thinkers, and they just believe the ideas which are prevalent here, like capitalism make them poor, and the government could more protection by the government could save us, could save them. So basically they just if you want to understand the Yellow Vest movement, you definitely should read an article by Frédéric Bastiat. Of course, you heard about this guy, called "The State." I think you can find it for free because it's in the public domain. It's just a short article called "The State" by Frédéric Bastiat. It was written in the 19th century, and you understand everything when you read it, because he explained exactly the confusion that the French have with tax and government. They always want less tax and more government. And he exactly explained, and he said, and that's why we have revolution and protest. And it was exactly the Yellow Vest. I was so impressed that it was so prophetic, this text of Frédéric Bastiat. So, but maybe, yeah.
I read Frédéric Bastiat and I thought, well, why did we need Atlas Shrugged then? Because it's so amazing and brilliant and clear, and then strangely and oddly, France. I mean,
you know what?
Bastiat was a French guy. I mean, what the hell, guys? Come on.
But you know what? I think Frédéric Bastiat is more famous in the US than in France. In France, nobody know him. Can you imagine that Ayn Rand is maybe more famous, not famous is a big word, known in France than Frédéric Bastiat? Frédéric Bastiat fell into oblivion.
He's in oblivion in America, I think. I mean, I know about him, and some objectivists know about him. I challenge my audience, if you don't know about Frédéric Bastiat, go read some Bastiat or listen to it. You can get a lot of his stuff on YouTube. You can just listen to audiobooks of his stuff.
But it's even worse in France. I checked the selling of the book of his book, The Law, and he sells more in the US than in France. And there is a very funny anecdote about Frédéric Bastiat. You know, when Margaret Thatcher in UK was in power, you know, she knew Frédéric Bastiat. She likes him a lot. And at the time in the 70s, yes, I think it was. I guess it was in the 70s. Or maybe in the 80s, I don't know. She met the French president of the time. It was Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. Never mind. And she talked with him about Frédéric Bastiat. She said, "Oh, I really like Bastiat." I don't know what she told him. And so the French president, he didn't understand what she was talking about, because there is a city in France called Bastia.
Oh, really?
It's in Corsica. And he said, so he thought she was speaking about the city, about the city of Bastia, and he told her, like, oh yes, they have a very good soccer team there.
Oh God! So she's trying to talk about French intellectuals, and he mentions that. That's terrible.
That's very a shame. Yes.
That's terrible. That's terrible, especially with such a great intellectual as Bastiat. The upper classes at least ought to know about French, the best French intellectual tradition.
Yeah.
That's the situation that it's in. Well, maybe one thing that we could do, talking about this stuff, is say Bastiat all the time. Just
this is what the libertarians in France they try to do that. And so sometimes the name of Bastiat arise from in the media. Sometimes it happens because I have to give them credit for that, because of the work of the libertarians, essentially. Yes. So I told you about the everything we have. The political force, the significant political force we have on the right and the center. So we have also two political forces on the left, You have by far the most romantic of the French politicians, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. I send you the Wikipedia article. And Jean-Luc Mélenchon, with his movement La France Insoumise, which means unsubmissive France. And if I want to be quick, it's communism. So he's essentially Marxist. He's very provocative and seems always very angry. He's quite popular among the youngs from the high classes, like the students, very popular among the students. And he has quite a lot of culture in literature and history compared to the majority of the politicians. And I said he's very romantic because he's very, yes, he's kind of figures of the, like he looks like an old politician from the 19th century, or I don't know, something very romantic in his style. And he was a friend of Hugo Chavez, and he supported Fidel Castro. So you can guess his philosophy, communism. Even if he don't claim to be communism, he make like some nuance, but basically it's the same. It's like kind of Bernie Sanders, but much more radical, I think, even more radical.
Now, him and those people aren't in power anymore, huh?
This guy was never in power.
2000 to 2002, he was in the Lionel Jospin government. I mean, so they were in the bureaucracy at least.
Yeah. In fact, yes. Previously, he was in the some years ago, he was in the mainstream left, but he left the mainstream left because there were not left enough for him, not radical enough, not communist enough, not socialist enough. And so yes, he created his own movement. He was minister, yes, in the socialist government, but I think at that time he was not so radical that he's now. That with time he became more and more radical. And finally, you have the former mainstream left called the Socialist Party. So this is the last of the five main political forces in France. And like the Republicans, it was in power for a long time in France. So they are also responsible of the current situation. And the more centrist of them joined Emmanuel Macron. And those who stayed blame him for being the president of the rich and of wild capitalism, exactly like Marine Le Pen says about Macron. But this party, it's, as I said, it's the last of the five main forces, because this party is almost dead now, because in this party, people in general left this party to go either to join Macron, either to join Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the radical left or the center.
Interestingly, this party, social ecology party, it says, with their little emblem with the hand holding a flower.
Yeah.
Are they green? What's going on with the green movement? Is the green movement big, or is it just a sideshow in France?
The green movement is the party, because you have the party, the Green, is not very. I was going to say it's not very important because they don't make big score in the election, but it depends, because in the national elections, the Green make very small scores, but in some other kind of elections, like the European elections, they make big scores. So it depends of the kind of elections, but in national elections, they are not very important. But in general, the idea of ecology, environment are very prevalent in the French society in general. So among all the parties, almost among all the parties, like for example, I told you about Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the communist. They are also very on the track of environment and stuff like that. And for example, Marine Le Pen always accused Emmanuel Macron to be to pollute the environment because of globalization. You know, she wants local production. She wants a national production because so she accused him of not being green enough. And but Macron is also a big thing about environment. So they are all, you know, it's the ideas of ecology themselves of the green are everywhere.
Yeah, so it seems to me like it's the new religion. Like we've given up religion, but now we worship the trees and blue skies and clean water.
Yeah, yeah. So and the ideology of the Socialist Party, in fact, is essentially postmodernist. You know, so it includes feminism, anti-racism, green stuff. In economy, there are moderate socialism, but in general, they are very politically correct. I guess they are more or less like the Democrats in the US, maybe more socialist, but yeah, something like that.
Now, the green movement isn't quite as big of a deal in France because you guys have so much nuclear power that you're not arguing about all the coal and oil that you're burning in your power plants. Is that accurate? Are you guys starting to undo the nuclear power? Do you know anything about the nuclear power picture?
I know that there is a lot of debate about nuclear because, in general, the leftists in general want that we undo the nuclear power, and the previous president, the leftist president François Hollande, before Emmanuel Macron, I think, I'm not sure now, I don't want to say something false, but I think he removed one central nuclear central, but I'm not sure. But yes, it's a debate. I think it's still a debate in France. So you have people who say we have still we must stay with nuclear power, and some others say that we have to make like Germany. So it's still a debate, I think, in France. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know the subject enough.
Germany, whatever road you go down, I'm just warning you that Germany has as many coal-fired power plants now as they did before their big push for clean energy, because they shut a bunch of them down and they had to open them back up and open up new ones because they have to have the base load power. You know, because you can have sunny and rainy days, you can have windy days, calm days, and you just have to have base load power. So they have as many coal-fired power plants as ever. But now they've spent billions and billions on solar power, or you know, solar and wind. All right, well that's good to know that it's absolutely everywhere in France. That's terrible. I mean, at least Trump is taking exception to that garbage. Do you know he went to the meeting at Davos or one of these places? The American delegation went to one of these environmental get-togethers, and they actually opened up a booth about fossil fuels, about how oil was good for the economy and how fossil fuels were a good thing. So
yeah.
That's what Trump does when he sends an American delegation to these environmental things, which we don't even show up and talk to anymore. So
yeah, you know, the climate change is a big issue in the. It's very a lot of discussion about that. No, not there is no debate. Like there is no people in the media, not anymore, who are saying that you know, like defending what we call climate denial or skepticism.
Yeah.
But you know, all the politicians, I think, yes, they are all agree on this subject. Maybe not on the solution, but but they are all agree that it's a big issue, and it's a big something that became more and more important in the political debate. And there is no voice, I think, no voice anymore, because they are so persecuted and so you know, they are accused of being skeptical. I don't know. So you can imagine. There is no voice, but it became it's so there is voice, but it's underground, like in the social media or stuff. But in general, yes, it became a very important, the more and more important subject in the political debate in France. But again, it's not debated like is it dangerous or not? Is it human or not? It's debated in the sense that what can we do? Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully that'll change. I don't know. Who knows when it'll change? That's too bad. Because they're trying to do that in America. They even tried to launch lawsuits against people who denied climate change, and that got shut down. But they've finished in France, huh? They've shut everybody up publicly anyway in the media and stuff. But now, see, that's why I call it a religion, because you got your climate deniers and your climate skeptics being just hounded and pushed out of the picture and persecuted, and basically it's a witch hunt for them. And if this were 200 or 300 years ago, they would definitely be burning them at the stake. Anybody who doesn't believe in the gods of the green rivers and stuff like this. Very religious behavior, and especially it's taken over. It's you say it permeates all political parties. That's the definition of a religion. So everybody can talk about whatever they want as long as they accept the baseline religion.
Yeah.
So that's.
I agree on this topic. I'm on the track of Alex Epstein. I think he's very good on this subject.
Yeah. Do you know that he was working with a company who they tried to sue over this? Do you remember what happened? Were you up on when it happened?
No, maybe no.
The Attorney General of Massachusetts tried to sue this company, saying that they had known about climate change since the 70s, and they kept on pumping oil and pretending climate change wasn't real. And so they subpoenaed the records of this company, including Alex Epstein's personal emails and stuff. And he sent her a tweet in response to the subpoena. He said, "Fuck off, fascist."
Okay.
That was his response. His response was not, "Okay, I will submit my stuff to you. Okay, please contact my lawyer." Nothing like that.
Yeah.
So we got to fight back against him. We got to do it. And sorry to hear France is in such a mess, but anyways, maybe there's something that can be done about it.
So, yeah, but now you see what the state of the political. You have also the political scene. Sorry. You see what is the political scene, the current political scene. You have also the intellectual political scene. I think it's interesting, and maybe it could be the subject of another video, maybe another time. But anyway.
Sure. So now there's a divorce between the public intellectual or the public political stuff and the intellectual undercurrent.
What was your question?
You're saying that there's a difference between the political scene, like we've discussed the 5 different big political groups, and you're saying that there's a different intellectual scene underneath all of that?
I mean the political scene, the intellectual scene is not exactly they reflect, like you can, it's not exactly like you have this intellectual who fit in this party and this intellectual who fit in this party.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated. Of course, you have a left-wing intellectual and right-wing intellectuals, more or less. But it's interesting because I mean that in France, intellectuals are very important and maybe very influent. I don't know. I don't want to compare with the United States because I don't know exactly how it it can be compared. But French, I think in France in general, and French people are very. No, I wouldn't say intellectuals. It's not what I meant, but they like ideas and speaking, debating with ideas and hearing about ideas, philosophical and political, and so intellectual scene is, I think, is important in France. And there is some important intellectual figures in France who are quite influential, who have influence. I mean, and it could be interesting to discuss that, but it will be a long discussion.
That might be more interesting than the politics, actually.
Maybe. You said. Oh, you meant that I was not saying something interesting?
No. I mean, because the politics is just a big mess of equivocation, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But the ideas on the scene might be more interesting. I don't know. We'll see what the French have for ideas.
The intellectuals can be even more confusing sometimes.
Yeah, and there is this. You got this tradition of continental philosophy, and everybody just sitting around at coffee shops talking about ideas that are just ideas for the sake of ideas. But it's an admired tradition in America. We admire people who can sit around and talk about ideas. We just forget how detached the Europeans are in that tradition sometimes.
That's possible, yes. Yeah. And I wanted to. I was thinking that last time you said that the United States could be like France if the United States, if the US wouldn't had not Ayn Rand, but I think it's not only this. You have also the historical roots of the country. America was the country of freedom before Ayn Rand, and what Ayn Rand did is that she used the historical roots, American historical root, to stimulate somehow the patriotic feeling of the Americans. And I don't say it's bad, but it works because it is the US. And in France, if you stimulate the patriotic feeling, people will not necessarily think of liberty. Maybe they will think of Napoleon Bonaparte, of General de Gaulle,
Robespierre.
Sorry?
Robespierre.
It's possible, yes, because Robespierre is the main reference of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the communist.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, I think of Robespierre when I think of French history. I think those bastards are always up to no good over there.
Robespierre is it's mixed because you have yes, I think most people are aware that he was a bloody dictator, but in the same time they are mixed. It's like with Napoleon Bonaparte, it's the same. It's mixed feeling because you have people who admire him, usually on the right wing, and in the same time, you know, yes, he was the kind of dictatorship, not kind, but he was a dictator, and with empire and war with all the countries. So yes, some people are proud in the same times because at the time of Napoleon, France was so powerful, but in the same time, yes, there are controversy. But this is historical figures from a time when France was powerful, and it's like, you know, in Russia, when the patriotism can sometimes be related to Soviet Union because Russia was powerful.
Yeah, and to Stalin.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are
Yeah.
people who have mixed feelings about Stalin. Now, I did a video that's an interesting thing that the millions of bodies in the concentration camps might not just be an accident, they might actually be the fuel. Like, as long as people believe, okay, millions of people are being arrested and killed, therefore something's going on. The people who aren't being killed look around and they think something's happening. Society's moving forward, we're changing, we're going through something. And so the very act of arresting and killing thousands and thousands of people every day, that fact alone keeps the revolution moving along. So, because it looks like there's activity and it looks like there's an event as long as you can keep it going. So the killing might actually fuel itself tragically. It might not just be like a sideshow that accidentally happens, I'm afraid.
Oh yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's the base of this kind of system.
Yeah.
Now, France is a country of socialism, but it's also partly a country of freedom, like Ayn Rand said in her journals. So I know that you sometimes you like to say bad things about France, and I understand why. But I think you would agree with me that to say that France also has a great aspects. She has great intellectuals, great writers, and it makes he made a lot in history, not today maybe, but in history for Western culture, and maybe America wouldn't be America without France, and vice versa. So it's ironic somehow that some French intellectuals like Montesquieu or Frédéric Bastiat may have maybe more influence in the US than in France, while some American intellectuals like Christopher Lasch, that I told you last time, may have more influence in France than in the US. And I think the challenge in France is to make French understand the deep meaning of liberty, which was advocated by the French intellectual at the time of the Enlightenment or the 19th century, except the socialists, of course. And this is what Ayn Rand have done with the United States. She make Americans understand the essence of the philosophy of the founding father. She connected America with its own history by showing the good that it has in him, in it. So, and the challenge, I think, is for France is maybe to succeed to make the same in France, because the problem is that you have kind of anti-Americanism. So if you rely on it's the problem we discussed in the first video, that the problem is French people will always say we don't want to just copy America, and we want to have our own way of being. You understand? So I think this is a big problem to make Ayn Rand ideas popular in France. This is the challenge, and that's why I try to. It's not that I try, but I think um, yes, it could be done by finding a way to advocate capitalism that doesn't sound like we're just adopting American way of life. And I think one of the reasons why anti-Americanism is so prevalent in France is that America became what France was supposed to become, i.e., a model of universal values which export everywhere in the world. And in fact, at the end of the 18th century, both France and America, with their own revolution, produced a universalist model, universal model. But this is the American model, which has been the more efficient. And I think in France, there is a kind of resentment because of that, a kind of envy, a kind of, we didn't win.
Yeah,
somehow,
not only that, like
competition.
we had the first revolution, you guys had another generation to think about your revolution before you tried it. So you should have learned from ours and done it a little bit better in your country. But your revolution turned out garbage, and and then you've had like Mark Stein says, if you go and look for the Constitution of France at your local library, you won't find it. You have to ask the librarian, where's the Constitution of France? It's in periodicals because they change it so often. We've just put it over in periodicals. So
Yeah.
you guys have a new government every once in a while, and ours is now 240 years old.
Yeah.
And we have had to clean up your empire. Vietnam was your mess. And I think Korea too. Weren't you guys in Korea too?
That's possible, yes.
I think certainly in Vietnam, there's a bunch of old French buildings there
Yeah.
because you guys owned the place, and we had to go in there and try to straighten it out, and then we turned tail and ran too.
But what you said about the French Revolution and the American Revolution, there was not a lot of years between, because it's 76 for the American Revolution and 89 for the French Revolution. So there is not a lot of years, and you have to understand also that, but of course you know it, that at the time of the American Revolution, America was not very important country in the world. It was like, okay, it's the small country of farmers. They are like, I check in not a long time ago. I don't remember I checked the year. I think it was 100, 800. The year. Sorry, 1,800.
1800, all right.
Yes, sorry. And I checked the population in the United States and the population in France, and so maybe people can check if I'm wrong, because I just say from memory. I think it was around 5 million people in America, and it was 30 millions in France. So in France, there was much more people than in America. America was not very important, so we didn't care so much about America. It was not what it is today. Now there is 300 million people in America.
340, I think, 330, something like that.
And we are in France
60 something, right?
Between 60 and 70 million people. So the growth of population in America became, and it is, by the way, it's because of immigration. just teasing you, but by the way, yes, the growth of population was very, very high in America, and yes, people understand that oh, this is the land of freedom. This is the land of freedom. Let's go here. So, and let's build a new, a new world. So, new continent. So, yes, that's what happened. But when the revolution occurred, yes, we couldn't. Somehow you, when time passed, you look at the past and you say, oh yeah, but maybe at the time it was not so obvious. Just want to defend our own revolution.
Yeah, well, not so. Just to point out, so the revolution at 1789, America signed its constitution in 1787. So there was barely a hair's breadth between us finishing our revolution and you starting yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at it that way, or there was 12 years difference if you start from the Declaration of Independence. But so, what the hell went wrong with your revolution? I mean, why did you go so? Maybe that's probably a good topic for a show. We're already an hour and more in on this one, but like I know the essence of it is you went with Rousseau, right? But America just wrote down some stuff on a paper, and we've been using that paper ever since. You know, why didn't you guys do something like that? What the hell did you do?
But we actually do that also. The Declaration of the Right of Man is exactly what you said.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what went wrong? What went different? Why? What is different and what went different, I guess, is the question.
I think it is, in my opinion, I think it would need a very deep thinking, but I think it's a very simple fact that we in France invented socialism in the 19th century. Because, as I said in one of my videos on my channel about why communism is still a thing in France, Karl Marx was not the creator of socialism, of course. Socialism comes from France. Karl Marx was a reader of the French socialists, and it was during the 19th century that we invent socialism. And starting from this, everything everything went bad.
So Karl Marx picked up a bunch of his ideas from this French intellectual scene of his day.
A lot.
Yeah, now France was the hotbed of thought at the day. Everything was about sitting around in salons and talking, and all the intellectual circles were there, and that even hung over right up into the world wars. France was still the cool place to go for intellectuals, to Ernest Hemingway and company.
Mm. And as I said in my video, after what happened also, that during the Second World War, the communists were in the resistance against the Nazi. So after the Second World War, communists were seen as heroes and victims in the same time, and they were very respected because of that. And I think this is the main reason why communism is still a thing in France. This is something that I talk in this video.
Well, that's a shame that you guys didn't have the same head bump that America had after the Second World War. Like, we really quickly came up against the communists as the new real big enemy. And I guess you guys had the luxury of not worrying about that because we were taking care of Western Europe anyway. So,
and you know, one of the reasons I think there is a kind of anti-Americanism in France. This is something that you talk in one of our last video, when you say, you remember when you say, we have very bad movies and stuff like that. And this is, as you said, in France there is intellectual traditions, and in general, the French people, they don't like the poor culture or the junk culture of that come from America. Like, the majority of the things that that come from the US in France, what is it? It is McDonald's, Walt Disney, Coca-Cola, blockbuster movies, anti-intellectual culture like entertainment, only entertainment and stuff like that. And so you have this cliche of the American without any culture, who doesn't know where are the countries or on a map, you know. And see, this is also something that is very prevalent in France and in Europe, I think, in general. And that's why also you have kind of anti-Americanism, and we don't want liberty because we don't want to become like that, you know. I think this is also how they understand it.
Yeah, setting everybody free will just make the most vulgar and the most money-chasing guy the boss.
Yeah.
So, and they've got a fair point, but my question is, what's your plan? If you're not going to do that, then what's your plan? How do you preserve your society? Because it looks like your society is just going to be eaten by the next more aggressive guy if you don't have freedom. Freedom's a mess, but it seems to be a better mess than everybody else's mess.
Yeah, that's why there is a libertarian blogger in France. He invented something that I found funny. This is a stamp with letter CPEF, meaning ce pays est foutu. I translate, it means this country is lost. So this is a stamp on, you know, it's kind of meme, like CPEF, this country, or in English, TCEL, this country is lost. Yeah, and this is sometimes you can, if you are pessimistic, you can think there is no way we can go out of this shit. But
yeah, I don't know.
We are not.
What could possibly save you from being Muslims 20 or 30 years from now?
So I think we have to understand, to be less gentle, or how saying, I don't know how to say that. How do you say? And I'm looking for a word in French, in English, in fact. Indulgent. We have to be less indulgent with Islam. Is it understandable?
Well, indigent means...
No, not indigent. Sorry, because of my accent, I can't express myself. So, to be less gentle with Islam, and to understand that it is ideology, exactly like communism and Nazism. It's a political ideology. And because sometimes people don't differentiate, for them it's not an ideology, it's people, you know. And left is tolerant with Islam because they take Islam for people and not for ideas, you know. And I think we have to understand, and that's why when I told you that there are some people who come from Muslim country and who are the best opponent of Islam, they explain very clearly that Islam is ideology and not people, and I think this is something that could help us really, because once you understand that it is a political ideology and a political ideology, you can fight it as such, like you are not fighting people because it's not genetic, you know, Islam. So it's not in the genes. So you can fight this ideology, religious ideology, and general in France. Sorry, we are not very religious in general. So, and we can fight it as, but it's very hard to make it understand that it's not people, it's ideology.
Well, I'm not very optimistic, I have to say. 10 years ago, I said this is going to get ugly in Europe, and it's just getting worse and worse over there. But
I think also we in France we should have much more freedom of speech.
You should have more. You need more.
Oh yes, because
Yeah.
there is a problem with that, with freedom of speech. And also, you know, there is something different with the US, is that in France, ethnic statistics are forbidden by the law. It means that you cannot make statistics based on ethnicity.
That's forbidden by the law. Well, it's forbidden.
Yes.
It's forbidden by the intellectual sphere here in America right now. Well, geez, I hope we never get to that point. I mean, I don't know. You know, Onar and I spoke about this. What does it matter if we point out the difference in IQ? It just means that 30% of black people are more intelligent than 50% of white people. It just means that there's some overlap in IQ. If you're going to use IQ to do anything, it's not going to help because there's smart black people and there's dumb white people. So it's not going to make any good or any difference. But if you make it illegal to talk about it, that makes it seem like there's something going on there.
Yeah, but this is something that French people don't understand about free speech. Because, for example, I give you another example, very specific. There is a law in France that forbid to deny the Holocaust.
Yeah,
You know?
it's illegal
And-
to deny the Holocaust. That's a
Yeah.
big problem. That's a big problem because then people wonder, is the government hiding something and why can't we talk about this?
Yes, exactly. And but this is not how. Of course, this is what happens. But when people, if you say to people, but it must be free to deny the existence of the Holocaust, they wouldn't understand they don't understand the principle of free speech. They don't understand that it is a principle. They will ask to you, but what is the point to give freedom to this bullshit? You know,
Yeah.
they wouldn't understand the point.
We all agree it's a bad idea, so let's just not talk about it.
Yeah. It's because they don't understand it as a matter of principle.
That's a shame, yeah. Well, that's what's got to change is a more principled view of not only freedom of speech but economic freedom too.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
you want taxes and you want to redistribute the taxes and you want welfare state and stuff, but where does that all come from? It comes from individuals having the freedom to open a business and produce the wealth to begin with.
Yeah.
So
We are. It's maybe you know, the contrary of the discussion you had with Doug, who we are too much concrete bound.
maybe so. Maybe so. I have that. Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe. What do you propose we be more philosophical about then?
Yeah. So I think as Ayn Rand said in her writing, I think really that the battle, especially in France, it's completely useless. I think I might be wrong, but I think today it's completely useless to this. I think I'm not sure of what I'm saying. I'm going to say, but I guess it's useless to fight in the political field, and you are first, as Ayn Rand said, to change the philosophy and the culture. And that's why epistemology is very important, like understanding principle. Free speech is a principle, not like you are not defending a particular idea. You are defending a principle of freedom, and and this is epistemological stuff. So I think yes, it's all about. I guess it's all a battle in the realm of philosophy and culture, art, and stuff like that. I think again, I'm not. I can. Of course, politics is not completely useless, but if you just by politics without changing the philosophy, without changing the culture, or a little bit at least, I don't think you can succeed.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me like France is in a position where whichever politician gets in, they're going to do some good things and some bad things, whether it's Macron or Le Pen, whether it's close the borders or cut taxes a little bit or something like that. That's all sort of not really a big deal. Definitely in America, what's the difference between George Bush and Clinton? You know, when Clinton was in and then Bush was in and even Obama. Obama was pretty bad, I admit, but like the difference between them was pretty small. But the left, if the left gets back in power again, if they get one of these people in the left in the presidency, another Obama, but Obama supercharged, it's just going to be really, really, really bad. So in America, I mean, in America, the camps are diverging. I think one of the reasons they're diverging is because of Ayn Rand's ideas. Ayn Rand's ideas are taking over the right, and they're squeezing the left into a smaller and smaller space. You know, they have to argue for a smaller and smaller group of dumber and dumber ideas. And France doesn't have any of that picture going on, I'm afraid.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, should we draw a line here and call that the end of our discussion on the history of French politics and understanding French politics up to today, but we don't understand today's French political scene? Or do we understand it now? Oh, the intellectual scene was next. That's right.
Yes, well, I think we can draw a line here, because if the video are too long, people will not watch it. And I think we can, yes, if you want, we can speak about the intellectual scene next time. No problem.
All right, let's call that politics in France, and next time we'll take up with the intellectual scene today in France.
Okay, no problem.
All right, thank you very much, Gio, for coming on. I'll be posting this on the channel, so keep an eye out for it.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.